In today's episode of the Hotelier Huddle, I had a terrific discussion with one of my all-time favorite revenue managers, Mike Godfrey, who spoke about his really fascinating, diverse career so far. Revenue, yield, price, and reservations managing a really interesting, diverse portfolio of properties across Australia and New Zealand. And very fascinating to hear about the time he temporarily left hotels and went to be a revenue manager in the car rental sector of our industry of travel, and how the different disciplines of pricing algorithms in car rental informs his decision now that he's back in hotels, particularly around length of stay controls and managing perishable products and excess demand. Fascinating chat for all of you revenue managers and aspiring revenue managers. I hope you'll enjoy the chat as much as I did. Mike Godfrey, so nice to see you. Thank you so much for doing this. It's nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you taking the time out of revenue and yield managing and building empires and, all that you have to do to join the Hotelier Huddle today. And if you don't mind, I always like to kind of read through just briefly the career experience so far of my guests, not to remind you because you know it, but just so that our Hotelier Huddle audience knows just how wildly qualified you are to speak on the topics of revenue management and to, be a member of the huddle. So if you don't mind, so far you were National Revenue Manager for Ridges Hotels, New Zealand, right? So that was from 03 to 09, so for a long time. And then you were Regional Revenue and Yield Manager with me at Mirvac Hotels for Queensland. And we might get into this in a little bit, but you were on the pre-opening team for two of our key projects, like major resorts, like resorts and spas.
Right.
And you implemented and managed all the revenue disciplines across those 8 5-star resorts. That was an amazing time. We'll get into that in a second. And then you were Director of Revenue for the very fancy Palazzo Versace in the Gold Coast
Indeed.
for a year. And that required quite a lot of restructured distribution network, account management work with OTAs, and that was quite a special project as well. And then you were head of revenue and business development with 8 hotels, a boutique hotel company. You were based in Sydney. Then you were a consultant with Lane Daily Enterprises, also in Sydney for a year. And that was fascinating to me because, that to me, that was when you did your most technical, fanciest, mind-boggling work that I will never understand, like implementing code-based integrated financial reporting program for a whole hotel budget system by market segment for contracting and PMS setup and rebranding of hotels. I mean, wowzers. Then this is where your experience kind of took a fascinating turn and an unusual one, which I love. You were National Yield and Revenue Manager for Omega Car Rentals in New Zealand for, was it 5 years, 2017 to 2022?
Yeah, just over 5 years.
Yeah. Then you came back where you belong into hotels. Thank you very much. As Regional Director of Revenue with Swiss Bell Hotel in Auckland, also in New Zealand. Then you were Revenue Manager for Amora Brisbane. And now you're starting a brand new gig. I think, can we say it? Is it Secret Squirrel, or can we say?
Of course, go for it.
We can say
Regional
right.
Revenue Manager for Spices Retreats. Yeah.
Woohoo! Very fancy. And that's as of 5 minutes ago or something. You've only been in that role a minute, right?
I haven't even been in there yet. Friday I start. So very exciting indeed.
Congratulations. They're very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
So now, having said all of that, you've managed revenue for everything from luxury resorts and hotels to car rentals. So this is a funny question, but if hotels and cars had a friendly debate about whose revenue management is trickier, which side do you think would win?
Look, I think, first of all, awesome intro. Thank you very much for that. And it reminds me of some funny days that I've had in the not too distant past. And rental cars was definitely a jumping out of my comfort zone. And
Yeah.
I'm really pleased I did it. I actually purposely left hotels to learn about revenue management in a different mindset, in a different fashion, and just to confirm that I actually understood what I was doing in a weird kind of way. Um, I think putting the two of them head to head against each other, though, it's each has their own challenges.
Yeah.
But I think in regards to tricky, I would have to say that rental cars would take the cake.
Okay.
Although, you know, you knew how many hotel rooms you had to sell on any given night.
Oh, of
In
course.
rental cars, your hotel rooms would move around. And you know, you would obviously have a very educated fleet manager. I worked with a great fleet manager who had his finger on the pulse. He knew exactly where things were going to be. But you know, things change. Weather happens. Cars break down. You could have 1,000 cars to sell in Wellington, and suddenly you've only got 800, for example.
Wow.
So that was that inventory control, or that understanding of where your inventory was going to be, was probably that, you know, that would sort of, it presented its own challenges that you wouldn't otherwise experience in a hotel.
Okay, long, nerdy question alert. It's my favorite kind of question, but it's a long one. So, Mike Godfrey, having managed yield in both the hotel and car rental industries, you've worked with fundamentally quite different inventory depreciation models. Whereas in hotels, where you belong, by the way, we have perishable hotel room nights versus depreciating physical assets with variable utilization in cars, right? If I've got that right, maybe you'll correct me. But when you
Correct. Yep.
returned hotels, and welcome back, when you've come back, which specific yield management techniques or pricing algorithms from the car rental world would you adapt for hotel revenue optimization? And I'm thinking particularly around length of stay controls, pickup analysis, or managing, the classic shoulder demand periods, that sort of thing. I know it's a long, nerdy question.
I love nerdy questions. So it was, I think rather than implementing anything new or bringing one rule or discipline from one industry to another, it was probably more of a new appreciation for
Mm.
typically length of stay controls.
Okay.
And that really came from, um, d- disconnecting not disconnecting myself from a customer, but disconnecting myself from what a customer is wanting versus what the business needed.
Okay.
And that I think I got caught up in, if I put a minimum stay control or a minimum rental control in place, then the person calling me is not going to be able to make a reservation. Whereas that is actually a reservation I didn't want. It was a booking I didn't want based on shoulder nights, and as you mentioned, balancing periods over a longer stays. So
And
a
that's
minimum,
okay. Excess demand, right? You're turning away business you don't
exactly.
want.
Dead
Yeah.
right. And that length of that excess demand is for a particular night. And it's something that it's a living, breathing rule. It doesn't you don't put it on and forget about it. You put it on and assess it and come back to it. And does it work? And is it working? And do I need
Amen,
to
brother.
increase it? Yeah. So I think the change in mindset was probably more prevalent coming back into hotels and going, well, I'm holding 85% on one night, but my shoulder nights are much less than that. I don't want anybody staying on that 80% night. I want to support the shoulder nights. And if someone's going to want to book for one night on that high demand night, they're probably likely going to be wanting someone else wanting to book for two nights. And
Interesting.
so I tend to use those a lot more frequently. And I think that was a habit I picked up in rental cars because, one of your first rules of thumb in a rental car is as you're running out of cars, you start closing these 1 2 night rentals because, as you say, a 1 and a 2 night rental decreases the value of the asset, and the more it's out on the road, backwards and forwards, the more you're having to put more effort into it, increasing costs and so on and so forth. So I
Yeah.
sort of brought that back into hotels with that same mindset, and recently been in a corporate property. You really see that work in a market like Brisbane, where you've got special events that are very honed in on particular days. You need to use length of stay restrictions. I use
You're
them all the
right.
time
And
now.
yeah, and the thing I worry about and I've observed in certain pockets of the industry is a sort of fear of using minimum length of stay controls, or even worse, they do what you just described, which is the set and forget, which is death to revenue management, right? It's death to
Absolutely.
profits,
Yeah,
set and forget. And and I wonder if you agree with this, and it's cool if you disagree. I've always sort of had the mindset and the way that I train entry level revenue management is that a minimum length of stay is a filter, not a force. So it's filtering out excess demand because you have so much of it for a certain um, segment or room type or event that you can afford to turn business away. But if you
absolutely.
don't have excess demand, it's not going to force people to stay longer than they intended to anyway. I mean,
Exactly.
unless it's for something like in Melbourne, where we have the Grand Prix, which is almost always at least a 4-night minimum, or we sell a specific 7-night package during the tennis or something like that. Setting those aside, um, and do you think that I don't know, the fear of using filtered kind of restrictions is going away in hotels, or is it only with advanced user gurus like you that know how to use them and how to measure them? And maybe people like you that are advanced gurus aren't as fearful, or do you see that going away?
Um, that's a good point. I don't see the fear going away, no, because I think
Mm,
I think people become, or revenue managers or hoteliers become too focused on that particular night or that
yes.
particular couple of nights. And
Yes.
although that particular night may slow down in regards to pickup, your shoulder nights won't be. So when you're picking up 1 or 2 nights on the night, you're probably picking up 3 or 4 nights on the shoulders that aren't restricted. And I think that's
Oh,
another
sure.
really important thing to remember as well is you don't need to apply a minimum stay to the entire period. You just
Yes.
want to hone in on particular demand peaks and use those peaks to leverage your demand on the shoulder nights. And shoulder nights is some, going into hotels and working with properties that don't have a lot of experience and overarching strategies that they're not even sure what a shoulder night is, let alone
Yes.
how to manage it.
Yes.
So yeah, take your attention off the particular night that's got demand, because as you know, as you said, that demand's going to come. That's why the demand is already there that you're having to protect. It's the shoulder nights that you should be watching, and of course, you might get one reservation on that peak night, but if you've got it for 2 nights, yeah, depending on what your rate structure is, you may be doubling your overall revenue, increasing your spend, increasing your capture, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. And I've often seen and said to hoteliers many times in my consulting life, especially, I wish that you would yield manage the hell out of the other 364 days a year the way you do New Year's Eve. Because I know New Year's Eve is important. And yes, for some hotels, it's 40% of your revenue income for the next 3 months. And I get that. But imagine if you obsessed about profit management, filters, competitors, pricing, imagine, and I know it's time consuming, but get yourself some good software and it'll do some of the job for you. Imagine
Oh,
if we yield managed every day of the year the way we do for New Year's Eve or when Taylor Swift is in town. Oh my God, the
yeah.
profit.
Exactly, exactly. And I think understanding your pace as well,
Yes, yes, yes.
especially for nights, those big nights like that reoccur like New Year's in a Sydney market. The amount of times that you apply after a 4 night stay, for example, and then you lead 2 weeks up to the event and you panic stations and we're already
Yeah.
holding 60%. And it's like, well,
Yes.
the last 3 years we've only picked up, 40% of our business within 2 weeks of the event. Just have faith in that strategy and understand it before you start applying it. Otherwise, you're dead in the water.
Oh, you're so right. And I mean, even I often admittedly forget the importance of booking pace. And
Yeah,
I know booking pace is it's quite hard to measure manually. And yes, you can put it in a spreadsheet and you can take a CSV extract of what's on the books compared to the same period last week, same period last month, same period last year. But I mean, there's, better solutions to manage booking pace in not a manual way. But I mean, you and I have both probably been in meetings with general managers where they're looking at our old friend Bob, business on books, for 3 months from now. And there's nothing like there's no room nights. Bob is pretty skinny 3 months from now. And an unawares, inexperienced owner or even GM might go, holy fuck, panic stations. Oh my gosh, there's nothing on the books 3 months from now. We need to do a flash sale. We need to do all these extreme measures and start discounting things just to fatten up Bob. When in fact, if the booking pace suggests that same period last year, you actually had even less on the books, or you didn't have anything on the books either, don't fret, everybody. Take a breath because the booking pace hasn't kicked in yet. We're not in our lead
yeah.
time yet, right?
Yeah, exactly. And to add to that, complexity of restrictions or overlapping or
Yes.
stacked restrictions can get really hard to understand or even dissect once you actually get closer to the demand night. So,
So many layers, right?
stacking events, stacking restrictions over and above each other, and putting a 3 night stay on, but closing arrival and all that sort of stuff. Just keep it simple to start with until you understand that pace, until you start getting a feel for, okay, this works and this is not working quite so much. Because, yeah, again, you'll end up 3 days out and not understanding where you're actually at and what's actually available without going onto your own website and figuring it out yourself. So
Yes.
keep it easy, keep it simple as you work towards it. And then the closer you get, if it's working, make it more complex.
Well, that's right. And in the absence of, the opposite of over engineering the situation is you try and discount your way out of a problem you didn't even really have.
Exactly, and I think touching on discounts, that's one of the first approaches.
Yeah, because it's
Before you
easy,
start laying
lazy.
all the exactly, yeah, yeah. But I mean, before you start applying all of these crazy, complex, engineered restrictions, I love that term. Um, maybe just close out your discounts first and
Yeah.
see where your actual demand is. Once
And
you've
monitor the hell out of
restricted
it, right?
those and monitor the, and it goes back to it's a living breed. It's just like a rate on a Tuesday that 4 weeks out might be $300 and a week out might be $400, but
Sure.
it's breathing. It needs to be monitored and watched and massaged.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so on the diversity of approaches and the different types of segments, I have watched you, Mike Godfrey, throughout your career where you've implemented revenue disciplines across a pretty diverse set of property types, from dynamic pricing across multiple revenue streams at Palazzo Versace, very fancy, to developing code-based integrated financial reporting programs for market segment budgeting
Yep.
at Lane Daily. I mean, holy buckets. Wow. And I'm wondering, how has your approach maybe to forecasting accuracy or booking pace that we mentioned before evolved as PMS and revenue management systems have advanced? And I just wonder, what metrics do you now prioritize for those that are listening? What
Yeah.
metrics now are most important when you're evaluating whether a hotel's revenue management sort of structure is
Yeah.
optimized versus just functional?
Yeah, sure. Another good question. I think first and foremost, I mean, there's two main things. Don't get caught up in the nitty gritty. Like,
Yeah.
you need to be a little bit more open or broad minded in regards to certain market segmentation. If you've
Okay.
got a 100-room hotel and you're expecting 3% of your business to come from one particular market segment, then that's not where you should be putting your attention in regards to making sure you're forecasting it to the cent. And, you know, focus on the bigger picture and look at where those real opportunities are and put your efforts into that. And then all of that other, little bits and pieces, that's going to come. It might not be quite so important to the property. It might be important to the property, but if it's not a decent contributing factor to the overall room nights and revenue, then don't get caught up in making sure you've rounded up to the nearest 10 cent or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, the other really big thing that I've always made sure I had a really good grasp on was special event activity, because that's
Okay.
essentially what's going to drive your new revenue that you're going to capture that isn't contracted and it's not walking in the door. There's other opportunities out there like special events that are going to bring new people through the front doors.
Yeah.
And if you've got a good understanding of not necessarily obviously what the event is, but where the event is, what's your walking distance? Is it in your footprint?
Proximity. Right.
Is it relevant for your star rating or whatever it may be? Is it for example, if you're managing a luxury 5-star swanky hotel that's right next to like right next to a showground, for example, R&A showgrounds in Brisbane,
Yes.
do you really want to be attracting those kind of people in the door? That's if you're going to go chasing after this business, are they going to be bringing? Well, you'll laugh at this memory, walking into the front door with a chili bin or an esky, sorry, under the
Oh,
arm, because you've dropped the rate so low to try and
yes.
get volume for an event, and then you just lose all of your on spend
You bought
because you've
into the wrong
attracted
segment
exactly. So I think
and you paid for the
understanding,
privilege to get a segment you didn't want.
yeah, and then your food
And
and
that
beverage
works both
outlets
ways too,
suffer, and
right? Like you might
absolutely,
be, revenue managing a really solid, good quality experience 3-star property, and you're not going to go advertising on Mr. and Mrs. Smith or, going after customers who expect a luxury experience just because they're willing to spend a
yeah.
3 or 4 or 5 digit sum per night because again, you're buying into the wrong segment.
Exactly. And that's
Mm,
just going to result in a really terrible knock-on effect of bad feedback online, because
sure.
you've managed to secure a sale at much more than what you should have, much higher value than the service or product that you're offering. And that comes down to guest experience. And revenue managers not management's not just about the numbers. It's also making sure that you're adhering to that guest expectation and not gouging the market because you think you've got the opportunity to. Because trust me, if you sell a room for $1,000, it's only worth 100. You'll hear about it afterwards, and you've got to
And it's
recover from that.
Yeah, and it takes a long time, if ever, to recover from that, and,
Yeah,
you've just created a long-term problem you didn't need. Um,
exactly.
and, on events, how do you define and or monitor an event? I'm curious about this because, I mean, you're looking after a range of different types of properties now with Spicers, I believe, and I just wonder what you classify as an event. Is it a major event that's going to attract 70,000 people to a venue, or is it a festival that's on for 5 days, or is it just, I don't know, weather? Like what do you actually classify as an event that warrants your attention?
Yeah, good point. I mean, an event is an event, and an event, in my definition, is something that's going to impact your typical demand for any given
Okay.
period, whether that be a positive or negative impact.
Yeah, either
I
way,
think
right?
it's
Yeah.
exactly, and I think having an event recorded is only going to improve education about what the market is doing. If you've got a massive event that's going to draw everybody to the Sunshine Coast, for example, um, then just because they're flying into Brisbane, that's not necessarily mean they're going to stay in Brisbane, using my
Right.
market as an example.
Right.
However, on the flip side of that, Rugby World Cup, for example, coming up in 2027, that could be a driving event for all surrounding suburbs, because people aren't, surrounding areas, people aren't going to fly in from wherever around the world, watch one game and then take off again. They're going
Yeah,
to come
right,
in, they're
right,
going to watch
right.
the game, and then they've got 4 days to kill until the next the next game that's on. So,
You'll
you know,
go elsewhere.
those
Yeah.
neighbouring regions have an opportunity to capture new revenue or new guests on the off event, or the period that's not particularly driven by whatever is drawing them into town.
Yes.
So again,
Like event
understanding what the event
adjacent.
is and where you fit into that. What was that? Event adjacent.
Yeah.
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 Cool.
I just made that up. It's probably not right. I just made it up. Um, and actually, this I think might make you giggle, and you probably expected I was going to ask you this. Speaking of just making stuff up, because I just made up that term event adjacent, and it's not even a real piece of revenue jargon. But as I recall, you once had a hotel owner say to you prior to an owner's meeting, this owner,
Yes.
and you don't have to name and shame the owner because I suspect you still remember the person, but prior to the revenue strategy meeting, said something like, don't come in here and back up your crap truck of revenue jargon acronyms or something like that. And again, without naming and shaming, I'm curious, as a revenue professional, how that made you feel, and if it shaped your future owner meetings or future reports or not. And before you answer, the reason I'm asking is because, I talk to a lot of revenue managers and about how they customize their message for their GMs or for their owners. Because some owners want all the jargon. Some owners
Yeah.
just want to know what's on the book. Some just want to know, what is sales doing for me this quarter? And so when you had that owner who said, don't back up your crap truck of revenue jargon items or something like that, how did it make you feel? And did it reshape your approach to meetings?
How did it make me feel? If I put my memory cap on, I believe it was back up your Jargon Junkie crap truck.
That's it.
Um,
That's it.
and
Jargon junkie crap truck. That's right.
after picking up my jaw off the floor,
And the jargon was like RevPAR, TrevPAR, ARI, MPI, that sort of thing, right?
essentially.
Okay.
And I'm
Yeah.
first to admit, I do tend to talk in acronyms. I've been in revenue management for 25 years, and
And
I
rightly so. Yeah.
it just comes naturally to me. I do forget sometimes that not everybody in the room might know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
And when it comes to owners, absolutely, I do tend to now adjust my dialogue. But when it comes to other people in a hotel, I think that is an education opportunity. And, the further up the ladder they get, they're going to eventually come across these acronyms and this
Yeah,
jargon that
right.
they're going to have to understand one day. So,
They do.
when talking with a team or in a direct environment, I actually, even typing an email, if I'm using a new acronym or one that's a little bit left field, I would put in brackets, this means that,
Yes.
etc., and turn it into a bit of an education piece. And I think people appreciate that. They're not going to be sitting
Yes.
in a meeting and going, I have no idea what this guy's talking about.
Yeah.
I've also worked with a great GM recently who was really good at reminding me that in a HOD briefing in the morning, reminding me that not everybody knows what you're talking about. And
Sure.
he'd sort of throw a question out, and I might mention RGI results, and he'd stop me and say, well, what does RGI mean? And it just sort of catches you and goes,
Yes.
that's right. I'm in a room of people that are well educated, but maybe not necessarily in my field. So I think
Yes.
there's a bit of a two-sided, double-edged sword in regards to that. With an owner, you adjust accordingly. Of course, they are the owner, that they're the one paying you.
Yeah.
You adjust accordingly and understand what they really want to hear and keep the rest for later. With your GM who can translate or elaborate whatever it may be. But yeah, in a direct team, I do continue to use it, but I make myself more aware of the people I'm talking to.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, for my listeners that may not know, tell us an HOD meeting is what now?
Head of department.
Head of department meeting. Very good. And for those of you also listening, in case you're not sure what MPI or RGI or TREPAR is, you could actually check the glossary on the Snap Consulting website. I'll put the link in comments until you're bilingual. And it reminds me, I think that general manager you described who does sort of call it out is excellent. And I was just thinking just then, there was a time when I was interim hotel manager at a hotel down here in Sydney. I was just kind of hand holding the property, and I'd only been there about a week. And there was this young fellow who'd been working at the front desk, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And he took me aside because I guess I seemed like I would have the answers and I would be kind to him. And he said, Shannon, I keep hearing this thing that people keep mentioning. It seems really important. What's an OTA? Okay. First of all, good on you for asking.
Yeah, yep,
Secondly, yes, it does come up really often. And we get a lot of our income from OTAs, which are online travel agents. And my point to
yeah,
that story is that for anyone that might be listening, if you keep hearing something and people are just banding about with this language and you're not sure what it is, ask someone, right?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
look it up on the glossary on the Snap Consulting website. That's my last plug. Um, so, my last question, Mike Godfrey.
Yep.
We close every single Hotelier Huddle podcast episode with the same question, which is a final toast. If you are raising a glass, and we both can, to celebrate hoteliers everywhere, to hoteliers, what would your toast be?
I mean, the last question and topic point really does segue into this quite well. And my good old rhubarb and ginger gin here
Ooh,
is my toast to those people, those more senior people in the industry we work in that take the opportunity to recognize something special in somebody and
yes.
do something about it.
Yes.
I fell into reservations. I did a job swap with our reservations. I fell into revenue. Sorry, I did a job swap with our reservations manager. I was AFOM, assistant front office manager, at at a property, and had the opportunity to experience reservations, which was a really good opportunity in my career. And the GM I worked with, after the end of the 6-month period, said I had a really good knack of yielding.
Wow.
At the time, I had no clue what that meant or what I was doing to make it look good.
But you
But
showed an aptitude for it.
naturally came to me. And
Yeah.
if that particular GM hadn't said to me at that time, you should try this new up and coming thing called revenue management.
Ooh.
I'd never heard of it. We didn't have a revenue manager in the property that I was in, and he didn't push me into it, but he enthusiastically encouraged me to give it a go.
Wow.
And that's when I became quite
Wow.
addicted to Excel.
Yes.
Started to understand what I was actually doing, and realized actually I am quite good at this, and I actually really enjoy it. So,
And so it
cheers.
began.
So it began. Cheers to those who recognize and act. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And cheers to you, Mike Godfrey, for joining the huddle today. Really appreciate your time. I will leave you to go and increase profits wherever you go.
I'll be having another gin, I think. Thanks, Shannon.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.